So I have a serious question to ask you. Do you have an impact on the lives of the people around you? Do you have an impact on the lives of others every day? And I want you to know, if the answer is yes, it's intentional. And I know that for a fact, and I've learned that through the years because there were two people that had they literally changed the direction of my life because they showed up every day and they wanted to show me things that I didn't even know I had in myself. That is the challenge as you listen to this. Who do you do that for? Welcome to the next 24 hours, where I'm going to give you real information you can really use to transform your life and work one day at a time. I'll be your host, Curtis Zimmerman. All right, well, I hope that you are living the dream today. In my keynote speech, Life at Performance Level, I talk a lot about being the director of your life, casting your show wisely, stop and think before you act. All of these things are so important. And today, with so much technology and so many things that are making us supposedly more connected, but actually taking us further apart from being real, being open, being vulnerable, and helping others in a deep way. So oftentimes people see me on stage and they think that I got there because of me, and I didn't, and nobody does, and nobody is successful on their own, just across the board. Now, you have to bring your gifts, and you have to apply yourself, and you have to work really, really carefully toward your goals and your dreams and your aspirations to make those actually manifest. So I'm saying you are the director of your life, but there are also those people that come on the stage that just, for whatever reason, put a brand new light on something or make you see yourself in a different way or see things in you that you never knew you had and help you utilize those gifts and blossom faster than if they didn't come into your life. So one of the people that did that for me is a gentleman named Tommy McLaughlin, and I talk about him often at the end of my program as really kind of my first mentor and the first person that I ever saw in such a way that was just like so giving and so loving that I didn't know that even existed. And it existed with him every day. That's who he was as a person. So the story goes that I was a kid at the mall hanging around, just kind of escaping kind of a bad situation in my family, and my mother being married 6 times and growing up on welfare and food stamps and all these kinds of things. I have dyslexia, so I struggled in school, and I saw him, and he was doing something without talking, and he was doing something physical with your body, and I felt like I had good body control. I used to love to dance as a kid, and he was doing mime. And so I followed him around for about 3 weeks, and finally I got up my courage, and I went to him and told him I could do what he was doing. I'd been practicing, and sure enough, he took me kind of under his wing, and he got the mall management to see me do my little robot routine, which he did, and they didn't want to hire me. And the story goes that he actually took $5 an hour out of his pay and told me the mall that did hire me, and they really didn't. And I got $5 an hour for the next 2 years. I worked at the mall and made $5 an hour. And literally it meant that $5 an hour came out of his own pay, and he gave it away to me, and he never told me. So that's the story, and that's what I share, and I ask other people to take that opportunity when you have it to just give openly and freely. But I state that he never told me, and oftentimes people come up afterwards and say, well, how do you know that really happened if he never told you? So I'd like to finish that story a little bit and share that with you now, and that is just to put in the framework of my stepfather at that time was a master mechanic and worked on very large trucks and things. And so he had like a real job as a mechanic, and he made $4.25 an hour. So at that time, when you go back that many years, $5 an hour was actually a lot of money. First off, I wanted to say that. Second thing I wanted to share was I never knew that he actually was paying each week until I was already working as a performer years later. So it was probably at least 4 years later. I worked at Marineland, which is an amusement park in Los Angeles, and I worked at Universal Studios. And so I worked at Universal Studios, and I was driving past the mall that I started in, Old Town Mall in Torrance, California. And I thought, I'm just going to pull in there and kind of walk around a little bit and just kind of go through memory lane a little bit. And sure enough, when I was walking through the mall, I saw the security guard, and his name was Bruce Bishop, and he was the singing security guard. So there was like piano players, and there were mimes, and there was banjo players and mimes, and all the things I mentioned earlier. Well, he was the security guard that also strolled around and sang. And so the mall had slowly weaned away from that kind of entertainment kind of as their brand of the mall, they went away from that. And so the only person that still worked there from all the people that worked there when I was there was the security guard. And now he basically was just a security guard. He didn't sing in the mall anymore. And I saw him, and it was like, oh my gosh, Curtis. And I was, Bruce, how are you? And, we hugged and kind of shared some of the things that we, had gone through over the years. And he told me, that when you first started, the mall never hired you. And I laughed. And again, I'm, Joe Performer now. I work at Universal Studios. And of course they did, and he said no. And then he told me the story about how Tommy actually took the money out of his own pocket and then trained me for 2 years. And then the reason why Tommy left the mall was he actually got a TV show. It was called the Dick Van Dyke and Company Show. And the and company was the LA Mime Company that he was the founder of, and he was the writer for all of their material. So it was Dick Van Dyke and the LA Mime Company. So he literally worked in the mall until they went and had their own TV show. So that's how amazing and talented he was. Well, at that point, I'd been there for 2 years. Their mime was leaving. They did really hire me then to work there. So all of that was due to him. And what was interesting for me after that was shared with me from Bruce Bishop, the singing security guy, I was working at Universal Studios, and sure enough, I saw Tommy. And I was miming, so I couldn't talk, and he saw me, and he smiled, and I noticed that there was a young boy with him, and I know that he didn't have children, and I found out that actually he was at Universal Studios because he was part of the Big Brothers and Big Sister program, and he had this young man there taking him on his day to Universal as a big brother. And I'm getting chills right now thinking about this because it's so vivid in my mind. I thought he reached out to me, and that was like so amazing. And it made me realize, because I was older then, that he reached out to hundreds and hundreds of people. And his personality was to give. And who he was as a human being and what he got jacked up over was giving away what he had and sharing it and improving the lives of others. And that is amazing, and that's true. And that's what I love about that story, is there are people that actually live that way. And it's my goal to try to do that, and it's why I love what I get to do now as a job, because I can never repay people like that, but I try to at least give away whatever I have and reach out to people. So I just had to share that story. That's the story that you don't get when you're at the keynote, but you can hear a little bit deeper. So before we go on to the next story, I just wanted to point out a couple things that Tommy did to have a huge impact. Number one, he was able to really spot the diamond in the rough, not just with me, but with other people. He was literally a serial mentor. He kept giving and giving everywhere he went. Last thing I would say is that he was really kind of anonymous. It wasn't about him. He did things and made things happen for people, and he didn't need any credit for it. Those kinds of things just made him an amazing human being. I have dyslexia, and so I was in special ed my whole life, and all the times we moved, I think we figured it out like 27 times or something we moved. I had to go into a new school. I had to be tested. And then they would say, oh my gosh, you're in the junior high and you're reading at a first grade level. Ding, 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 special ed. And there I go to room 27 or whatever it was. And so I recall that exact situation happened where another new school, I'm in junior high, I'm reading it, God knows, such a poor, I literally had report cards that were straight Fs in my life. That's just part of who I am as a human being. And I met this amazing woman that was a special ed teacher, and her name was Norma Natal. And she was one of the most giving, worldly, world traveler, just amazing people I've ever met. And to this day, I think about her and who she was and what she brought every day to the classroom with, basically at that time they'd call the rejects, the kids that couldn't sit still or, wanted to fight everybody or were reading or spelling at such a low level. She got all those problem kids. And she was able to treat everyone differently. So the first day I was there, she interviewed me. And she said, so tell me what you're interested in, tell me what you like, tell me what you dislike, tell me about, the different schools you've been to. And she was truly interested. And she did what I call now a knee-to-knee, where she sat with me knee-to-knee, looked me right in the face, and really just wanted to get to know who was Curtis Zimmerman, not what all this, she had a whole 5 or 7 pages on me as far as the testing that was done and everything. You had to be placed in special ed at that time. She didn't care about any of that. She wanted to know, who are you as a person? And so sure enough, I told her, I really love juggling and I think it's amazing and I love magic and, mime. I was already starting to work at the mall. The whole Tommy thing was happening by then. And she just was listening and taking notes in her head. And I came back the next day, and the next day she had a table and chair in a corner. And on either side of that little table and chair, she had stacks of books. One stack was all about juggling, one stack was all about mime, and one stack was all about magic. And she had a poster that she put up of Marcel Marceau, the most famous mime of all time in the world and my idol at that time. And on the other side, she had a poster of a juggler. And I sat in the chair, and all I could see is the stacks of 3 books and those 2 posters in front of me. And she purposely did this because some of the other kids in her classroom were very disruptive, and she knew if I was facing out, I would be distracted by the chaos that was her class and her life. And I literally sat in that corner and went up, I believe it was 2.5 to 3 grade levels that year. And I learned how to read that year, and I learned what love looked like that year. And she gave and gave and gave. And the reason I went up those grade levels wasn't because she had a formulaic, okay, you're going to read this and then you read that. And it was she put things of my interest that I couldn't wait. You couldn't pull the books out of my hand because I was so excited about the content. And when I do speeches now, I always say content is king. I don't care what your presentation is. I don't care how amazing your PowerPoint is. Content is always king. And if you're not giving content like she was giving me, the content that fed me as a person, if you're not doing that, it doesn't matter how good your little show is or how good a presenter you are, because everybody wants to be fed the content that they're interested in and that they love. And she knew that as a person, and then she took that and used that as a way to elevate me as a human being, but also to feed me to say, Curtis, you can be a juggler. Curtis, you could be a mime. Curtis, you could do magic tricks. Here's everything here, and there's magic little things called books. And me growing up, we had no books in my house. So I had to ask her, could I take this home? Like, oh my gosh, can I check it out? And of course, she let me take them home. And I just have to say, that's a magical gift. And so many educators and teachers and special ed teachers and people in my life have given me so much. And she wasn't finished. Because when I graduated from high school, I'll never forget, I came home from the ceremony. Now, remember, I was the first one in my family. I'm the youngest of 5 children, and the first one that lived in our family unit that graduated from high school, so it was a really big deal. And I came home, and I was all excited and had on my cap and gown and everything. And when I walked in the house, right there on the couch was a whole set of Polo luggage. And I mean, this is when Polo was huge. It was like, wow, really expensive, really nice, and a little card. And I opened up the card, and the card was from Mrs. Natal. And it very simply said, Curtis, thank you for being the first student that I've ever had to graduate from high school. I got you this Polo luggage because I know as a performer you're going to travel the world, and I want you to go in style. And I wore that luggage out. So once more, thank you, Mrs. Natal, and for all those educators out there, thank you for all you give. So for me, Norma had such a huge impact, but I wanted to just look at the way that she did that. And she always used the lens of love. So first, she loved every single student. She knew that they were all different. And what she did was she literally interviewed those people. Think about that with our educational system today. She interviewed each student and then she customized what she thought it would take for them to grow and to succeed and to really enjoy what learning was all about. The other thing she did was she didn't end with the school year. She followed up. She kept track of me. What was I doing in the future? And that's why that luggage showed up when I graduated. So over the next 24 hours, I want you to think about that diamond in the rough around you. And I want you to not just think about it, but remember, this is about taking action steps. I want you to set up a Skype call with them. I want you to take them out to lunch. And when you do that, I want you to really listen. Listen. That's what was so amazing about the stories we just heard. People listened. So here are a couple opening questions, and then I want you to listen. 1, tell me, what's your dream job? Number 2, oh, you know what? Tell me about a big win. What's something that's happened in your life recently that most people don't know about, but it's a big win for you? And lastly, what's a challenge that you're facing right now? What's something you really could use some help on? Now, if you do that and you do it in the next 24 hours, you'll get to live the dream. But more importantly, you'll help others do the same. Hey, thank you for listening to The Next 24 Hours. It would mean a lot to me if you found this content today valuable, that you share it with your friends. Leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. And if you want to learn more about what I do, it's really simple. Just go to curtiszimmerman.com. Remember, in order to live the dream, you have to make the next 24 hours count. The clock is ticking.